any person, the number of 12 or more, unlawfully wirelessly, judiciously assembled together for the disturbance proclamation of the Queen's name in the exact form of the Riot Act.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Williams. I'm one of the clergy team at Newport Cathedral, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this annual commemoration of the Chartist uprising. I'm sorry that we can't gather together around the memorial in Newport Cathedral churchyard today because of the pandemic, but it's still important that we remember the events that took place here in Newport, not just for their significance for this city, but their significance on the development of the democratic life of the whole of our nation. These are challenging times, and the principles of Chartism are as important as ever, because it's only by everyone feeling that we each have an equal stake in the future of our country that we will come through this very difficult situation we find ourselves in at the moment. So you are very welcome to this commemoration this evening.
Every year here in Newport, around November the 4th, we commemorate the actions and the sacrifices of the Newport Chartists who marched here on the Westgate Hotel. And that's a really important part of Newport's DNA, but it's also a really important part of the history of our democracy in this country. It's the last armed, large-scale insurrection against authority in Britain. Now, although we're commemorating in a slightly different way this year, it's always really important, and never more important really, to understand the principles and the values that drove them. And at a time when we are going through a global pandemic and all the economic insecurity that brings, those kind of actions of the Chartists to bring together communities, to fight, to have a voice in a say in how the country is run, is important today as it ever has been. It's important that we have politicians that are representative of us, that we're able to have our say, that we are accountable to people, and that we have governments that are scrutinised. And the Chartists, they fought for secret ballots, for ending property qualifications for MPs, and for the extension of the franchise. And it's important today that we ensure that as many people as possible are able to take part in our democracy. So as we commemorate here this year, I want to say a big thank you to all those in Newport and beyond who helped to keep the history and the memories of what the Chartists did alive in our city, and we must remember that campaigning for these things is important today as it ever has been.
My name is Ruth Jones. I'm the Member of Parliament for Newport West, and this time of year, every year, especially when I'm walking down Stow Hill into town, I think about those 10,000 Chartists who marched down Stow Hill on the morning of the 4th of November 1839 to demand a fairer democratic process. They weren't asking for much. They were asking for votes for men over the age of 21, a wage for MPs so anyone could stand, not just those who owned property, and a secret ballot so nobody could see who you voted for. Not unreasonable demands, surely. But they were mown down by the soldiers who were stationed in the Westgate Hotel, and 22 of them are believed to have been killed, and most of whom are buried in the cathedral at the top of Stow Hill now. And the leaders of the uprising were sentenced to death and then eventually transported to Australia. So certainly as an MP, I think about them, especially when I'm standing up to speak in the chamber in the House of Parliament, because if it hadn't been for their sacrifices and the beginning of the Chartist uprising, people like me would never have been able to stand for Parliament. I don't own land, I'm not a wealthy gentry person, so it's thanks to them that people like me, the ordinary people, are able to go to represent people like you in Parliament. So I'm intensely grateful to them for the start they made in that long fight for democracy and the overthrowing of the old ways of the parliaments. So I always think of them, especially on November the 4th.
Dyma ni yn dod at ddechrau mis Tachwedd. Yr amser traddodiadol I gofio'r meirw yn ôl calendar yr eglwys, ac yn ôl traddodiad llawer mwy diweddar, yr amser pan fyddwn ni aelodau o'r mudiadau sydd yn gwerthfawrogi ymdrechion ac aberth y siartwyr yn 1839 yn dod at yn gilydd I sefyll ym mynwent yr eglwys gadeiriol Gwynlliw yng Nghasnewydd a chofio am y dynion a menywod rhai a gerddodd lawr Stow Hill, Siagat y Westgate a Thynged Gweidlyd, a hynny yn enw rhyddid ac yn enw ennill y bleidlais I bobl cyffredin. Leni fydd ni ddim yn cwrdd ym mynwent Gwynlliw, ond byddwn ni yn ei cofio nhw'r un peth, a byddwn ni'n cofio nhw bob dydd yr wythnos a bob dydd o'r flwyddyn, oherwydd mae haberth nhw a'i gwaith nhw yn rhy bwysig I ddianghofio, mae wedi ffurfio yn byd ni heddi. Sbrafwch yn ôl mis Mawrth, ces o'i gyfle I sefyll ac I eistedd yn ogof y siartwyr, lle o'n nhw'n cadw eu harfa nhw, a lle o'n nhw'n cwrdd yn y dirgel cyn paratoi I ymgyrch nhw I ennill y bleidlais. Ac oedd hi'n ddwrnod nadw o o'r ym mis Mawrth, ac oedd hi'n bod y glaw, ac oedd hi'n bod o eira. Ac o'n hi'n o'r, ac fe'r nesgyr ni. A wedyn rhai misoedd yn ddiweddarach, o'n i'n eistedd yn gyfforddus am ples T20, ger Casnewydd, cartre Sir Henry a Sir Charles Morgan, teulu cyfoethog, oedd Pierre lot o'r gweithfeydd o'n cwmpas ni. Ac oedd hi'n ddwrnod bref o fai. A meddyliais I wedyn, bydd oedd y well gyda fi. Eistedd yn yr oerfel ar glaw ar gwynt, gyda'r siartwyr, brwnt, carpiog, ar ben mynydd gyda'r llaw trefel. Neu eistedd yn esmwyth yn y ples, gyda theulu bonheddig Sir Charles. Yn gobeithio bydd ni wedi dewis, bod gyda'r siartwyr yn ei hargyfwng ac yn ei hofan ac yn ei ddicter a thimlo bo fi'n dioddau gyda nhw. A thimlo hefyd wrth gwrs y byddwn ni ar ochr iawn hanes, ochr y tlawd, ochr hawliau dynol yn erbyn braint a chyfoeth. Gobeithio.
I'm here at the Chartist statues in Newport, commemorating that amazing history when in 1839 some 10,000 people from Newport and the surrounding valleys marched on the nearby Westgate Hotel. They were marching to overthrow the authority at the time, which was so unfair and so undemocratic. And it was actually the last large-scale armed rebellion in Britain. And we do celebrate that history here in Newport ever more strongly. In recent years there have been more events. The children have continued to march down Stow Hill. The commemoration has got stronger and stronger. This year it has to be digital, but I'm sure in years to come we'll get together physically once more. And of course it's so important that we remember the lessons from that movement and its relevance for today. We are going through the COVID-19 pandemic at the moment, and it's been crystal clear that we are still a very unfair, unequal society. And it is the poorest people who've been hit hardest by the pandemic in terms of their health and also in terms of their economic impact. So let's remember the history of the Chartists. Let's continue to get together, to be collectivists, to draw together as a community, to deal with the challenges of the pandemic and to create a more equal, fairer Wales and Newport as we move forward together.
This is a time of year that we pay tribute to the Chartist cause, and this year feels more important than ever. a poem by Gillian Clarke, The March. Boots and rain drummed the tram roads that bitter night in 1839, potholed and stumbled with mud and stones. 5,000 men, workers in iron and coal, from mine and furnace, Sahawi, Abu, Rumney, heads bowed against the storm like mountain ponies. Their bones ached from the shift, wind in the shaft, the heat of the furnaces, yet on they marched, their minds ablaze because their cause was right. Through darkness, from Ebervale, Blackwood, Pontypool, faces frozen and stung by the lash of rain, trudging the roads to Newport through the night. At the Welsh Oak Rogerstone, betrayed by daylight, Frost's men from the west, Williams from the east. Jones' men never arrived. The rest struck on to stand united, of one heart in the square, before the Westgate. Had they stood silent then, had they not surged forward, had not been shaken by rage against injustice, had they muzzled the soldiers' muskets with a multitude of silence, had reason spoken, those steely 1,000 might have won the day. But they stormed the doors to set their comrades free, and shots were fired, and freedom's dream was broken. A score dead, 50 wounded. Their leaders tried, condemned, transported. The movement, in disarray, lost 50 years. Then came, at last, that shift of power, one spoonful of thin rule at a time. From strong to weak, from rich to poor, from men to women, like a grudged gift.
These are the names that we know of the Chartists who were shot dead outside the Westgate Hotel on November the 4th, 1839. There were certainly others, unknown Chartists, who were succumbed to their wounds elsewhere. These are the names that we know of. Abraham Thomas, Collier of Blaenau, Isaac Thomas of Nantiglow, William Williams of Cwmtillery, David Morgan, Tinker of Tredegar, John Morris, miner, William Aberdare, John the Roller of Nantiglow, John Codd, David Davis of Wynheglan, Bryn Mawr, Di Davis, son of David Davis, William Faraday, Collier of Blackwood, John Blaenau, William Griffith of Merthyr, Lodge 657, Robert Lansdowne, Rhys Meredith of Tredegar, Evan Davis of Collier, John Davis a carpenter of Pont Newydd, Private Williams a deserter from the 29th of Foot Regiment of Foot, George Shell, an 18-year-old apprentice carpenter from Pontypool. May the past sacrifices made by the Chartists to gain justice, liberty and the right to vote always remain a valued gift for us today.